Well, that depends. Some reproduction carts are made for IPs that have been abandoned, and thus they're made for preservation purposes. Sometimes those purposes are for bigger libraries, other times it's for personal use, specifically so that you could get your hands on a cartridge instead of playing it on an emulator. For abandoned IPs, and yes, those do exist, this is pretty much one of the easiest ways to get your hands on a rare cart. Or at least get your hands on a rare cart without having to pay out the ass. Being that the IP is abandoned, no one's actually claiming copyright on them, and no one particularly cares if the carts are reproduced. But you still want to make a distinction between the reproduction cart and an actual cart. And you want to do that for the third-party market. Sometimes you could also get repro carts for IPs that you own that were repackaged in a certain way. For example, the Nintendo World Championship cart. This was never sold, and Nintendo has never actually claimed copyright on it. But it does feature other games inside it, games which you might own, and thus have the legal right to own them in other forms. This is still a bit of a gray area, because everything involving repro carts and emulation is, but there's basically an argument that you can get a repro Nintendo World Championship cart without actually stepping on the toes of any copyright. And many NES cart collectors do just that. There are also repro carts for carts that have just kind of been lost to time. Terranigma, for example, never came out in US territories. So getting a Terranigma repro cart would allow you to play that game on a North American region SNES. And some people would rather go this route than, say, cracking their SNES to play carts from other regions or using adapters or something like that. Repro carts are also 100% legal if you own the original cart. Like, say you owned a copy of Pokemon Emerald, but your save battery was starting to go. You can try and replace the battery yourself, or you could just buy a Pokemon Emerald repro cart. It's a backup. It's basically legal. And then there's a matter of fan hacks and fan games. Repro carts are great if you, say, want to play Kaizo Mario on your original SNES. People have even made repro carts with tiny computers in them that act as randomizers. They basically generate a new randomized ROM whenever you turn the console on. So yeah, there's lots of reasons to use repro carts. I mean, there's a lot of gray area. There always is when it comes to emulation and reproduction, but there's lots of legal areas too. And there's definitely reasons for repro carts outside of reselling and scamming people. In fact, if I'm going to be completely honest, that's a very small part of the community that makes these things. It's a problem, don't get me wrong. Most people who make repro carts don't want people reselling them. And it's especially bad if you start reselling them to major retailers. But they exist for many reasons other than scamming and reselling.